Hi, this is PA Camping Dad, Doogie. I'm going to show you how I made my Hex Tarp. It's 11-foot Ridgeline, fully rigged out. This is in Dutch's Xenon 0.9. So it's very thin and light, and you see how it compresses down. So I may make another stuff sack that's a little longer. I wanted to try the double-ended. First I tried a long skinny one. This doesn't have the tarp in it. I just threw some scraps in there. It fit in here fine, but it was kind of hard to stuff because of the thinner diameter. So I went to a little thicker, went a little shorter than I probably went too far both ways. I'd rather it be a little skinnier than this and a little longer. But we'll try this a little bit, see how it works. Let's get into the process. Here's a little trick I use to make the cat cuts. I got an old piece of cardboard, and what I did was I took some little finish nails. It's a pretty sturdy piece of cardboard, so I put a nail through the cardboard at either end, and I measured straight this one there. So at either end I have the nail measured between them, drew and measured 2 inches from the center down, and flex a thin piece of wood in there. Draw on it with a Sharpie and then cut it out. Well, I cut my 2 pieces out and laid them on top of each other, and I clipped the one side with binder clips together, and then just to ease the handling I'll roll up this side, since I'll be sewing the seam where I have the clips done. one thing you want to remember to do before starting any of your long seams is give a check to your bobbin. You really don't want to be running out on the ridge line of the tarp. So with each case, you want to make sure that you do a lock stitch at the beginning. And the way that I don't pin, I often don't even clip, but I figured I would clip this time just to get started. But I make sure that I have the two layers lined up exactly how I want. I'm running right along the edge of the presser foot. Another little trick is I have some weights that I use to keep the fabric from pull and slide off the table. First seam is done. As I started filming this, I thought it would be a lot better to demonstrate the whole ridgeline seam on a smaller piece of fabric. So I'll do it in one shot. So here's the first move. This is your main part of your tarp is out this way, and this will be the ridgeline seam. Just line these up and oops. Refilled my bobbin. So I always do a lock stitch. Now hopefully these pieces of fabric are straight enough. They were just some cut-offs. So that's your first seam. Now the next move, or first stitch line, the next move is to take your whole tarp and flip it inside out. And the idea is that you want this stitch line to be right on the edge. And now you're going to stitch, and it's nice you can see through the fabric. You want to stitch out here so that you completely enclose those ends there, which is why you don't have to worry about any fraying. So that first pass, I ran the seam right on the edge of the presser foot. So this one I'm going to run on probably like the 15mm line or so, 5/8 of an inch, I guess. You want to just make sure that you're out far enough. Normally, once I have it down on the presser foot, I fiddle with the fabric. It's a little easier with a small piece to get that seam right on the outside and keep a little tension on it. So we're going to run it right on that edge there. Again, do your lock stitch. that's your second. You can see with a little light behind there that the other seam is completely captive in there. And then the final stitch is you just open this up and you just got to decide which way to fold this, one way or the other, and then you run a stitch. And this is probably the stitch that you'd need to be the most organized with when you're doing the tarp, because the previous two passes you had all your tarp material on the open side. For this final seam, you're going to have half of the tarp that needs to pass through the sewing machine here. So you need to roll it up, that excess material, and have it clipped off so that it doesn't catch on anything. And just want to be real careful that you don't get it underneath and accidentally stitch it to the inside of your tarp. So here you just want to make sure that you keep everything stretched out nicely. Again, start with your lock stitch, and then you just run this right on the, run your stitches right down that edge of your fold you made. And take your time, especially when you're doing the long tarp. And again, I always check my bobbin. I probably should put my little bobbin in. And that is how you have your finished seam. And that would normally be the, I don't know which is the top, but, and you want to, when you seam seal it, you want to get right on the thread. You want to seam seal on the thread. I normally do both sides. I know people say they only need to do one side, but I do both. So I may take some video of me doing the full tarp, but I think this seam was a lot easier to see it while it's continuous. So here I am getting ready to do the final stitching on the ridgeline. You see I have one side of the tarp all rolled up and bundled. Hopefully. In the beginning it's always a bit of a pain because the fabric is pulling. The weight of the rest of the tarp is pulling on you. And that's why I have these little weights every once in a while. If it gets to be too much of a pain, I'll pull up some of the fabric and kind of weight it down. That's okay. I'm getting ready to make my reinforcements for the corners. So got a piece of cardboard and laid it down and marked out the edges of my tarp, because there's very slight curves to these. It's not straight line because they're cat cuts. So I marked the edges onto the cardboard, and then I like to come in about 3 inches with my tie-outs. I'm about to, so this is the tie-outs that I'm going to use this time. I think these are the Linelocs 3s. They'll be in the parts list, which I'm going to use for this tarp since I don't need the bungee self-tensioners with this material. So I'll come about that far, about 3 inches in, and so I'm going to mark this. Made a little template there. I'll cut this out. I don't know if you can see the lines. Not very well. Too much glare. I'll cut that out. I'll do a single fold. I'll show. in the reinforcing material to keep the one edge finished, and the other two edges will be caught up into the rolled hem. One thing I've found difficult is to capture both sides of the grosgrain through the tarp without being able to see it and get both evenly when you're sewing them onto the reinforcing corners of the tarp. So what I've done the last couple times is make my loop, get it all lined up, and just do a quick stitch on the edge. So that's what I'm going to do now. I've put in a zipper foot so that I can get nice and close to the edge here and keep everything lined up where you can see it is a lot easier. And that way it's a lot easier to keep it lined up when you go to sew it. It'll want to stay in this position, so it'll be a lot easier to capture both sides. And I'll do that with all four corners. So once you have the reinforcing pieces cut out for the corners, you need to make a simple rolled hem. On the side that'll be inside, that won't be on the outside edge of the tarp. And you'll see you have little tails from how you fold it down, and just trim those off so that you're back to square, you know. So this edge will be trapped under the rolled hem of the tarp. I believe this one is the side of the tarp and this is the end of the tarp. So when you cut these out, you got to remember to make two flipped the other way, so you can just cut them all out the same and just roll this top the other way for the others, because there's slight differences to these for the cat cuts. They're slightly different. Probably could force it in either way, but I keep it straight. So I will mark these two and then have the other two not marked, so I'll know which is which. Well, now it's time to make the template for the Ridgeline reinforcements. So here I have the reinforcement for the Ridgeline cut out, and I'm going to do the hem on this one. Now what you want to do is when you get close to the end, you're going to want to roll the other side in as well. And I just do it in place. And once I get it held down like that, you can use a seam ripper, or I just had a pen handy. I can often just keep it down with my fingers. Once it gets under the presser foot, you're all set. So you want to make sure that you come just onto that new fold. One more stitch. There we go. Leave the needle down, raise your presser foot, and spin around. And This is the same technique that I use going all the way around the tarp, so I figured I'd show you that there to start, and it makes for a nice finished point there. And repeat that. It's good practice. Again, trim off these little tabs because this section will be held under the rolled hem of the tarp. And I did mark each of these with a little dot so that I knew which way was which, as I did double check, and it's not quite symmetrical because those two sides have a slight cat cut to them. The other two are straight that I marked with a ruler. So here's where these little weights really help. The way that I've done this is I've taken the tarp and I've spread it out so that I have my first corner here that I'm going to work on. The ridgeline is up here somewhere. Here it is. And I've fashioned it so that I want to roll my hems this way. So what I'm going to do is I made sure I have this piece matches this corner exactly. So what I'll do next is I'll come back here to the middle of this edge, and I'm going to work myself all the way around the tarp. So I just pick somewhere in the middle here and start my rolled hem. And I don't pin, I just roll it and go. So once you get the roll down, get it into position. And you see I have, I don't know, more than 18 inches from the edge, from the corner. And the tighter that you keep this rolled hem, the easier it is on the cat cuts. So I try just to do about a 1/4 inch with each fold of the roll. And that seems to work pretty well. So now we need to stitch down these reinforcements. Done here is got it lined up in here, and I very slowly put the needle down in, then raised the presser foot and peeked underneath to see that I'm perfectly in line, my two sides are evenly tight, so I'm all set to go. is it, and I will very carefully melt the ends of the threads, make sure everything's good. Repeat on the other end. Same thing with the side pullouts. Saw that I previously stitched this. I did pin there very carefully and try to get it lined up. If the X is needed here, I'll start in the middle so I don't have to disturb my pin. For the others, and we're done. Well, then we got a seam seal. Some of the final numbers on this, I added about 25 feet of Dutch's glow-in-the-dark cord, and I used them for the pullouts. I used the Lash It, Zing It yellow cord for the Ridgeline, and I think it's about a 35-foot Ridgeline with a Dutch hook and a tarp flea. That's 20 grams for the Ridgeline. All four pullouts are 20 grams, and my stuff sack, actually didn't calculate that since I changed out the cord locks I had on it initially, and I dropped 6 grams. So I guess the stuff sack is 7 grams, and the total all rigged out in the package is 318 grams or 11.3 ounces. And I think it's great fabric to work with. The low stretch really helps. Get out there and have fun.